What if I told you that death isn't the end? That those who have passed on are not gone, but more alive than ever? Eleanor Hartman never believed in near-death experiences until she had one herself. A critical care nurse, she spent years saving lives, only to find herself on the other side. What she saw changed everything she thought she knew about life, death, and the universe itself. This is her story, a journey beyond the veil and back again.
My name is Eleanor Hartman, and I never imagined I would die at 47 years old. As a critical care nurse in Chicago, I had seen death more times than I could count. I had watched people take their last breaths, held their hands as they slipped away, and comforted grieving families, but I never thought I would be the one lying on the floor, my own life slipping from my grasp. I had always been a practical person, someone who believed in science, logic, and the things we can measure. If you had told me before that near-death experiences were anything more than hallucinations of a dying brain, I would have dismissed it outright. But what happened to me that day was more real than anything I had ever experienced, and it changed everything I thought I knew about life, death, and what comes next. It was an ordinary Wednesday morning at Westfield Medical Center, and my shift had started at 5:30 a.m. The hospital was strangely quiet, a lull that every nurse knew wouldn't last long. I had just finished checking on a middle-aged patient recovering from heart surgery when it happened. Without warning, a crushing pain shot through my chest, as if a giant vice had clamped around my ribs. My breath came in short, desperate gasps. My vision blurred. I instinctively reached for the edge of the counter, trying to steady myself, but my hand never made contact. The last thing I heard before the darkness swallowed me was the panicked voice of a colleague yelling my name. Then, nothing. Later, I would learn that I had suffered a massive pulmonary embolism, a blood clot that had traveled to my lungs. I was clinically dead for 4 minutes and 36 seconds, but during those minutes I was more alive than I had ever been. The first thing I remember after losing consciousness was floating. I wasn't in pain anymore. In fact, I felt weightless, as if a great burden had been lifted. I looked down and saw something that should have terrified me. My own body, sprawled across the hospital floor, surrounded by frantic colleagues, but instead of fear, I felt something else entirely. Peace, absolute, indescribable peace. I hovered above the chaos below, watching the scene unfold with an eerie sense of detachment. The ER team, people I had worked with for years, was desperately trying to bring me back. Dr. Patel, our lead physician, was already at my side, barking out orders in his usual steady but urgent tone. "Start compressions. We need a crash cart in here now." I watched as Linda, my closest friend and fellow nurse, fumbled with the defibrillator, her hands shaking. Tears streaked her face, but she forced herself to focus. I wanted to tell her I was okay, that the pain was gone, that I wasn't afraid, but I had no way to communicate. It was like watching a medical drama from the outside, except this time I was both the observer and the patient. I felt no panic, no fear. In fact, I had never felt more at peace in my life. Every worry, every stressor that had plagued me, gone, like a whisper carried away in the wind. And then something else happened. I felt a pull. At first, it was gentle, like a current tugging me forward, but then it grew stronger. I turned away from the scene below, drawn toward something unseen. Light, not just any light, but a warm, radiant glow that seemed to vibrate with energy. It was beautiful, brighter than the sun, yet soft and welcoming. I wasn't afraid. Instead, I felt drawn to it, like a long-lost traveler finally returning home. As I moved toward the light, I became aware of something extraordinary. My mind was expanding. Thoughts became clearer, sharper, more profound. I suddenly understood things I never had before. It was as if my entire life had been viewed through a dirty window, and now the glass had been wiped clean. Then I entered the tunnel. I had heard stories from patients about the tunnel of light, but I never believed them. Now, here I was, moving through it at an indescribable speed. It should have been disorienting, terrifying even, but it felt natural, right. The tunnel wasn't just light, it was filled with music, though not like anything I had ever heard on Earth. The sound was woven into the very fabric of the space around me, a harmony that resonated deep within my soul. It felt like love in its purest form. As I emerged from the tunnel, I found myself standing in a place that defied earthly description. The colors here were unlike anything in the physical world, vivid, luminous, shifting with energy. The very air seemed alive, filled with warmth and an overwhelming sense of belonging. And then I saw him. Standing before me was a being of light, radiating such immense love and wisdom that I immediately felt humbled yet completely known and accepted. Though he didn't look exactly like the paintings and sculptures I had seen, I knew who he was. It was Jesus. I couldn't move, not out of fear, but out of sheer awe. The presence before me was unlike anything I had ever experienced. Jesus stood there, his very being radiating a love so pure and powerful that it brought me to my knees, though, strangely, I had no physical body to kneel with. He wasn't the way I had imagined him from paintings or Sunday school stories. There were no flowing robes, no crown of thorns. Instead, he was light, brighter than the sun but soothing, never blinding. His eyes held a wisdom beyond time itself, but more than that, they held deep, infinite compassion. Eleanor, he said. His voice wasn't a sound but a feeling, a direct transmission into my soul. It was warm, familiar, as if I had known him forever. I didn't speak, but somehow he understood every thought and emotion rushing through me. He reached out, not with hands, but with pure energy, and in an instant, a flood of understanding washed over me. Everything made sense. Every struggle, every moment of pain and loss in my life, they weren't meaningless. They were part of something greater. I saw how each hardship had shaped me, taught me, prepared me for this moment. There is something I must show you, Jesus said. With a mere thought, the space around us shifted. It was as if I was suddenly everywhere and nowhere at once, watching realities unfold, seeing things I had never even considered before. No, I saw a vast realm, neither heaven nor earth, but something in between. This is the place where souls come after death, Jesus explained. It is a realm of healing, learning, and preparation. I saw souls resting in golden light, their beings radiating peace. Others were gathered in great halls, reliving their lives, not with shame, but with deep reflection. They saw every action they had ever taken, not just from their own perspective, but from the eyes of those they had impacted. Every act of kindness rippled out into the universe. Every harsh word, every moment of anger left a shadow. Nothing is lost. Everything matters, Jesus said gently. And then he turned to me, and with infinite love in his voice, he said, "It is time for you to see what comes next." With a simple gesture, Jesus guided me forward, and suddenly we were moving, not by walking, but by thought alone. The space around us shimmered and changed, and I found myself standing in a vast, radiant realm that defied earthly understanding. This is the third heaven, Jesus explained. It is not the final destination, but a place of preparation, healing, and understanding. Here, souls continue their journey. I took in my surroundings, overwhelmed by their beauty. The landscape was unlike anything I had ever seen, alive, shifting, responding to thought and emotion. The colors were richer, deeper, more vibrant than anything on earth. The very air carried a melody, a hum of divine energy. Then I noticed the souls. They weren't physical beings, but I could perceive them clearly. Some radiated brilliant light, while others seemed softer, dimmer, as if still growing into their full brightness. Each soul here is in a different stage of their journey, Jesus said. Some come here to rest, some to learn, and some to help guide those still on earth. He gestured, and before me, the realm opened into three distinct areas. The gardens of peace. I saw souls in what looked like golden fields, basking in warm light. Some sat in deep contemplation, others engaged in silent communion. I could feel the serenity emanating from them. These are the souls who lived lives of kindness and service, Jesus explained. They rest here, growing in wisdom, preparing for what comes next. Their light varied. Some shone brilliantly, others softly. The brightness of a soul reflects how much love they allowed to flow through them in life. Jesus continued, but all are growing, all are loved. The halls of learning. Next, I saw vast amphitheaters of light, where souls were engaged in deep review. They were reliving their earthly lives, but not as punishment. Instead, they were learning. I watched as a soul experienced a moment of kindness they had once given, a simple smile to a stranger. They saw how that small act uplifted the stranger's spirit, leading them to show kindness to another and another in an endless ripple. Then I saw a soul reliving a moment of anger. They experienced the pain they had caused, not as condemnation, but as deep understanding. Every action matters, Jesus said, not because of judgment, but because of love. Growth comes through understanding. The guardians and healers. In another part of the realm, I saw souls working together, guiding the living. Some were comforting grieving families. Others were subtly nudging people toward better choices, whispering thoughts of encouragement, steering them away from danger. I suddenly recognized a familiar presence. My grandmother. She looked exactly as she had in her prime, radiant, vibrant, full of life. She turned to me, smiling, and though she spoke no words, I felt her love wrap around me like a warm embrace. We never truly leave, Eleanor. Her thoughts flowed into mine. Every prayer, every moment of love. We hear them all. We help as much as we can, but always with respect for free will. Tears filled my eyes, though I had no physical form to cry with. Then Jesus led me to the final area. The healing chambers. Here I saw souls engulfed in soft, luminous energy. Some were surrounded by beings of light, gently healing them. These were the souls who had suffered deeply on earth, through trauma, addiction, or darkness. This is what many misunderstand, Jesus said. No soul is ever lost. Even those who lived in darkness can be healed. Love is the most powerful force in existence. I watched as a soul, once consumed by anger, slowly absorbed the healing light. They saw their past mistakes, not with shame, but with clarity. There is no punishment here, Jesus said, only healing, growth, and the opportunity to choose love. I stood in awe, overwhelmed by the depth of compassion in this place. Then Jesus turned to me with a solemn expression. Now, you must see what lies ahead, not just for you, but for the world. As Jesus spoke, the landscape around us began to shift. The colors, the sounds, the air itself seemed to vibrate with a new energy. I felt a gentle pull, and suddenly, I was no longer standing in the realm of healing and learning. Instead, I found myself in what I can only describe as a place beyond time, beyond space, a vast expanse where past, present, and future intertwined. Jesus raised his hand, and before me, an incredible vision unfolded, a glimpse of the future. At first, I saw a world bathed in light and harmony, a future where humanity had finally learned to live in peace, where compassion guided every decision. In this world, people cared for one another, not out of obligation, but out of a genuine sense of love and unity. I saw medical breakthroughs that eliminated suffering, communities where no one was left behind, where people worked together instead of against each other. The earth itself seemed to thrive, nature and humanity coexisting in perfect balance. This is one possible future, Jesus said. It is what happens when humanity chooses love over fear, unity over division. I felt a deep sense of hope swell within me. This was a world I wanted to see, a future I wished for. But then the vision shifted. The light faded, replaced by a stark and unsettling darkness. A world in crisis. I saw another possible future, one where fear, greed, and hatred had taken root. In this world, people lived in division and conflict, distrust ruling their hearts. The planet itself looked sick. Pollution, destruction, and suffering stretched as far as I could see. People wandered disconnected, isolated, as if they had forgotten they were meant to love one another. This is another possible future, Jesus said, his voice tinged with sorrow. It is what happens when humanity chooses fear over love, selfishness over unity. I watched as nations crumbled under war, corruption, and greed. The suffering was immense, and yet, amid the darkness, I could still see small sparks of light. People who chose to be kind, who chose to forgive, even when surrounded by pain. There is always hope, Jesus said. Even in the darkest times, light can still shine, but the path humanity chooses will determine how much suffering it must endure before it remembers the truth. I felt the weight of those words deep in my soul. The future was not set in stone. Humanity had the power to shape it, one choice at a time. The ripple effect of every choice. Jesus extended his hand, and suddenly I could see the interconnectedness of all things. Every act of kindness sent out waves of light, spreading farther than the person could ever know. A single moment of love, helping a stranger, offering forgiveness, choosing peace, rippled across time, influencing lives in ways unimaginable. Conversely, every act of cruelty, every moment of selfishness or hatred sent out waves of darkness. These ripples didn't just affect the person who committed them, they spread, touching lives in unseen ways, creating more pain, more suffering. This is why love is the most powerful force in existence, Jesus explained. It is not just a feeling, it is an energy that shapes the universe itself. Every soul, every choice matters. I was overwhelmed by the magnitude of this truth, the illusion of separation. Then I saw something even more profound, something that shattered everything I thought I knew about life and existence. There was no separation. The boundaries I had always believed in, the idea that we were all separate individuals, were nothing more than an illusion. Every soul was connected. Every life was woven into the same great tapestry. When one person suffered, that suffering rippled through all of existence. When one person chose love, that love uplifted not just them, but countless others. This is the greatest illusion humanity must overcome, Jesus said. The belief that you are separate from one another. That illusion is the root of fear, hatred, and suffering. When humanity remembers its true unity, it will finally know peace. I felt my very essence tremble at the realization. the role of souls beyond death. Then Jesus showed me what the dead were doing. They were not simply resting in peace, nor were they gone. They were learning, growing, healing, helping. I saw souls working together, guiding the living, inspiring thoughts of love and wisdom. Some were watching over their families, offering unseen comfort. Others were preparing for new journeys, new lives, new experiences. Some were helping shape entire worlds. I watched as advanced souls worked with energy itself, creating, guiding, and assisting in the evolution of existence. It was then that I truly understood. The universe was not static. It was alive, constantly expanding, constantly evolving, fueled by love itself. And each of us, in ways beyond our understanding, played a part in it. The final message. Jesus turned to me, his presence radiating with the deepest love I had ever known. Go. It is not your time to stay, Eleanor, he said. You must return. But before you go, remember this. Every soul is on a journey. Every act of love matters. Every choice shapes the future. I felt a deep sorrow rise within me. I didn't want to leave. The love, the peace, the understanding, I wanted to stay in this realm forever. But then Jesus said one final thing that shook me to my core. Tell them what you've seen. Tell them that death is not the end, that love is the answer to every question, that no one is ever truly lost. His words reverberated through me like a song, sinking deep into the very fabric of my being. And then, in an instant, I felt myself falling, backward, downward, back toward my body. Returning to life. The world came rushing back in a sudden, jarring moment. I gasped, my chest heaving for air, my body trembling. The bright hospital lights glared above me. "We got her back," someone shouted. I blinked, dazed, as the faces of my colleagues came into view. Linda was crying, clutching my hand. Dr. Patel was watching me closely, his face lined with exhaustion. I had been dead for 4 minutes and 36 seconds, but those few minutes had contained an eternity of understanding. A changed life. Since that day, I have never been the same. I no longer fear death, but I cherish life more deeply. I see every person differently, not just as a body, but as a soul on a journey. So, I have come to understand that our time on earth is precious, a unique opportunity to learn, to grow, to love in ways that are not possible in other realms. And most importantly, I know now that the dead are not truly gone. They are more alive than ever, participating in something far greater than we can imagine. One day, we will all understand this truth. Until then, our mission is simple yet profound. To love, to forgive, to live with purpose. Because every choice, every action, shapes not just our own souls, but the future of existence itself. Lying on the cold hospital floor, surrounded by my colleagues, I felt a strange sense of stillness. My body was back, my heart was beating, and yet, a part of me was still there, in that other realm. Linda gripped my hand, her face pale with shock. "Eleanor," she whispered, her voice trembling, "we thought we lost you." I could still hear the monitors beeping, the hurried footsteps of doctors and nurses moving around me, but it all felt distant, unimportant. I had just experienced something beyond life itself. How could I ever explain it? Dr. Patel leaned over me. "Eleanor, can you hear me?" I nodded weakly, but my mind was far from the emergency room. How could I put into words what I had just seen? How could I describe standing before Jesus, witnessing the boundless love that existed beyond death, seeing the future of humanity laid out before me? I had no answers, but one thing was clear. I could never go back to the person I was before. A new perspective on life. The days that followed were filled with medical tests and concerned faces, but nothing they could measure would ever explain what had happened to me. My lungs recovered, my heart was stable, but my soul had been forever transformed. I saw the world with new eyes, the small annoyances of life, the traffic jams, the rude customers, the long work hours. None of it mattered anymore. What mattered was love. Every person I met carried a story, a struggle, a lesson. I saw them not just as individuals, but as souls, each on their own journey. I spent more time with my family, cherishing every moment. I spoke more gently, forgave more easily, and loved more freely. I no longer feared death, but I also no longer feared living. And so I have chosen to share my story, not to convince anyone, not to prove anything, but to offer hope. Because I now know this: we are never alone. We are all connected, and when our time here ends, we do not vanish. We continue, we learn, we love. And one day, we will all go home. In the weeks after my return, I wrestled with an impossible question. Why was I sent back? I had experienced something so profound, so real, that part of me longed to return to that place of unconditional love, peace, and understanding, but Jesus had made it clear I had work to do. I kept thinking about his final words to me. Tell them what you've seen. Tell them that death is not the end, that love is the answer to every question, that no one is ever truly lost. At first, I hesitated. How could I possibly explain this to people? The logical, practical side of me still feared judgment. Would they think I imagined it? That it was just the dying brain playing tricks? All right, but deep down, I knew the truth. I had been given a gift, not just the experience itself, but the chance to return and share it. And I knew that somewhere, someone needed to hear it. Love is the greatest force. If there's one thing I learned from my time beyond this world, it's that love is the most powerful force in existence. It's not just a feeling, it's an energy, a force that holds everything together. Every act of kindness, every moment of forgiveness, every gesture of compassion sends out waves of light that ripple across the universe. I saw it with my own eyes. And I saw the opposite too. How fear, anger, and hatred create shadows, not just in our own lives, but in the lives of others. The choices we make matter. Every thought, every action is a step toward either light or darkness. And though we are given free will, we are also given a simple, profound truth. Love heals. Love transforms. Love is the key to everything. We are never alone. Since my return, I have felt the presence of those who came before me. My grandmother, the souls who guide and protect us. I have learned that our loved ones do not leave us. They are still with us, watching, guiding, waiting until the day we are reunited. And most of all, I know this: we are here to learn, to grow, and to love. So that when our time comes, we will step into that light without fear, only joy. Since that day, I have never looked at life the same way. I no longer fear death, but more importantly, I no longer fear living. I understand now that every moment matters, every choice, every act of kindness, every word spoken in love. Life is not random, and we are not alone in our struggles. I know now that when our time here ends, we do not disappear. We continue, we learn, we grow, and we return to a love greater than anything we can imagine. And in the meantime, those who have gone before us are still with us, watching, guiding, sending love when we need it most. We may not always feel them, but they are there. Jesus showed me that the greatest illusion we must overcome is separation. We are all connected, every soul, every heart, every life, and in the end, we all return to the same source, love. So I share my story not to convince, but to offer hope. If you take nothing else from this, take this. Love is the answer to every question. Love is what matters, and love is what we will carry with us forever.